Finding freedom, delivering and managing digital experiences on your own terms with Amplience. Wow, that's quite the title. And you know what? I know Amplience a little bit, and they are truly the heart of your DXP. They have a bunch of stuff that connects to it really well, like search, like content modeling, like planning, like visualization. There's a whole bunch of really cool things that Amplience brings to the table. And Neil from Amplience is going to take you through all of it and how it connects to Vue Storefront.
Hello, everybody. Firstly, thanks to the Vue Storefront team for having us. Really excited to be at this summit. We've been doing some great things together, so hopefully show you a bit of that. Bit about me, I'm Neil Mistry. I'm the VP of Solutions here at Amplience. I've been here for 15 years, always around content creation processes, and we've had evolutions of CMSs over the years, but it's always been about delivering at scale and giving people the freedom to be able to manage those experiences, especially for the past 5 years or maybe a little bit more. We've been in the headless world, very, very early adopters, and we'll share some of the secrets and some of the considerations, especially when you have teams using things to manage those experiences for you. Right, let's get into the interesting parts. So we'll start off by saying a modern front end needs a modern CMS, and we say that for a number of different reasons. Firstly, there's a bit about how people use tools and use CMSs in the past. Like a lot of the web CMSs and some other CMSs like have many different tools and hands-off. They have like coding that you need to put into place, or long lead times to be able to actually see and accurately see what the content is going to be, and look after the deployment and the DevOps of all of those kind of things through the process. There's usually loads of different people involved. But if you look at some of the feedback here, you can read this for yourselves. You know, common things like can't get out of Excel for planning, can't reuse my content in different applications or different places in the same application. You know, lots of different passes. Can't see where the experience is going to be there. You know, this one's probably key. Changes always require a developer. Some of you might remember that kind of stuff. But also the deployment side, right? I can't deploy myself. Teams are up at night. We can't see how it's going to look effectively. So Amplience takes a different approach and puts all these things into a system and interacts with everything else that you need, right? It's about having master media assets to using your content that can be transformed for any size, shape, or format, fits in with your design systems. You have a component library inside of Amplience, permissions-based and organized. And we also have a marketing calendar inside, which lets you plan and also like schedule, but also choose where content's going to go. But we'll show you more of that a little bit later. And obviously having the Mac APIs, microservices, API first, cloud headless to make sure it's scalable, and localization parts. So all of this means that you can kind of bring the designers, developers, and producers together to involve everyone in a process that makes it super, super simple to use all the way through. We'll flash this up to give you some context, right? We talked about a kind of DAM in place, the master media asset. So that's a DAM that gives you like automated jobs for processing and loads of other things in terms of classifications, like image recognition. We compose things into media sets, which are groups for product media, which is really, really exciting. It means you can do some interesting things. Obviously, video transcoding, normal things about search and discovery and archiving and all of that stuff. We also have the dynamic content, which is the CMS inside of Amplience. Now, that is also an experience management platform. So it's not just the content modeling and content extensions, but it's also about like how you author the content, bring in the planning, choosing where things are going to go and when they're going to go, seeing all of that through, modeling the actual experience and all the parts of the experience that aren't just content. But also all the dashboards and everything else that you'd expect. And we also have webhooks, so you can automate things. We'll touch on that later, as well as content search. So that's one side of the problem. That's kind of the users using the tools, right? So the other side is the experience management process, right? Which is the applications themselves. And they also typically had some problems. And this is where Vue Storefront comes in so well. It's a framework which gives you the freedom to be able to manage and like curate everything that you need from an experience perspective in code. But at the same time, lightning fast, the frameworks are there, the integrations are there. We've got a huge following. But in the old world where people are moving from, there's proprietary frameworks, there's tightly covered architectures, there's things that are only optimized for pages or only optimized for HTML in place. And performance and scaling and DevOps of all of these things is hard. So if we go for Amplience again, our role is to give you the APIs to make it super fast, and the APIs that make sense for the use case that you're trying to achieve, right? The storefront is the main place, but it might not be the only place that this content's going into. And a few examples on the right-hand side over here. So if we take that back to the platform, pink stuff at the bottom is the stuff that we just talked about. The APIs in place are really handy for application builds. So dynamic media API, which we'll go into a little bit more. We got next gen content API, which is super fast. It's architected for speed. So under 30 milliseconds time to first byte, JSON is given back to you, and you can use that in your modern applications, apps, or anything else. We also have a content rendering API that uses the next-gen content API, but it allows you to put handlebars templates inside of Amplience, so you can actually request things via a template and get it back as HTML. That might seem weird, especially if you're just dealing with modern front ends. However, for things like email and other channels that are a bit more legacy in some of the way that they work, this can be super helpful. As well, to our friends at Algolia, they're OEM'd as part of the Amplience solution, so you can index, set up your content searches and everything else, and get it through their SDKs and everything that you need to. So it's all part of one thing. And really importantly, and we'll touch on this a little bit later, it's all delivered from Amplience, so you can be completely sure that content is going to be scalable, it's going to be delivered throughout the world, and it's going to be super fast. Right, okay. So if we bring that back to some visuals, because that's just being boxes, it starts with problems like these, right? Like content production processes where people are looking for developers to update things just to get content live. And that's where CMS, especially a headless CMS, comes in. And this is a full-time job. And typically what it means is you don't get a chance to focus on the experience, but instead you're doing like day-to-day content changes throughout the way. So obviously, we map really nicely into Vue Storefront, where things are components. Those components are essentially content types inside of Amplience. They can be modeled in lots of different ways, stitched together into like different modular components and everything else. So it gives you some great dynamicism and gives you the ability to have a content graph that you can traverse all the way through. But what that means is that when you're modeling content, the content can be put inside of Amplience. They get the forms to fill out their content, but on the right-hand side, they get to see exactly what's going on. So through the process, the designers, the copywriters, everyone's got a hand in it, but it means that people start to think about content, right? As components that can be used everywhere as part of everything, rather than individual pages, which gives them a whole load of reuse and fits into an app architecture and a modern framework really well. And there's also something else that's missing. So if you've seen this, if you've worked in like commerce before or retail, this is quite typical, where people print out what the websites and things would look like at a certain point in time, and then people kind of build things throughout to kind of match it. And some of that's still part of a process. However, we bring that into Amplience. So what you're seeing over here is one of our customers with a content planning calendar inside of Amplience, and that lets them set up their campaigns, when content's going to drop as part of those campaigns, and also choose where it's going to go as well. So they choose different slots, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, and then choose the content that's going to go in it. And that way they can see everything at any point in time. So it lets them kind of like specify, schedule, plan, and do everything and choose where content's going to go way ahead and look after all of the deployments and everything else. Right, last marketing style slide. A few logos on the right-hand side, you can look at them in your own time. But as you can see, we're commerce focused, 350 plus brands and retailers, probably a lot more now actually. But then obviously they trust us because of the SLA. It's industry leading 99.99%, and some of the architecture we'll get to a little bit later for you. All right, so first freedom then. Simple. Focus on your application. What I mean by that is all the DevOps and everything else, right? So I'll go back to a different kind of architecture slide, but I'm really focusing on this area at the top over here, this optimized content delivery network. And this is really important because not only is it load balanced between multiple CDNs, at the moment we use Akamai, Fastly, Cloudflare, but we also have multiple DNS providers to protect against like DDoS attacks. Plus we have multi-tiers. So we have like edge CDNs, mid-tier CDN, plus our auto-scaling origin service. But all of this means that you don't have to look after any of that DevOps. Plus we're a SaaS platform, plus we're multi-tenant. And so hopefully that will mean that you get all your updates all the time and you can just adopt them as you will without having to do anything. And everything's backwards compatible, which is a really key thing in retail. Also, we release hundreds of releases every year. So, some of the features might be relevant, some won't. But that gives you the freedom to not have to worry about that stuff, right? Use the platform and use your services to make your application the best way. Next is the freedom to model your app in your way. And we'll go back to basics here just in case, but like the headless concepts, especially when it comes to content, is about managing content as data. So on the left-hand side, it's like a little visual. On the right-hand side are all the kind of attributes that I'm choosing that the business user should be able to manage, right? So heading, subheading, image, stuff like that, right? And modeling that content means that you can have that reused elsewhere. So you've broken it down, you've put it as data, and that means it can be used in any experience, and you know that stuff, right? But there's complexity in that because sometimes you want to reuse existing components or things that you built before that have a different data structure or have different nesting of different components. So you need to be able to shape that data in the right way. So Amplience is quite unique by using JSON schema as its modeling. And that means you can traverse and shape your JSON objects exactly as you'd like them. It's readable by humans, machines, you get examples, annotations, all the great stuff that's in there, right? You can have like links, partials, references, and construct your data so that as your application is fetching it, you can get the stuff that you need, right? But like I said, the bottom point is really important. Structuring to map any kind of component and any kind of data structure is really, really key. Just like everyone else, there's like a schema editor. You don't have to use the JSON. You can just click and select from the fields and shape your kind of content type. It gives you an instant visual of what the form would look like. So you can bring your kind of content people on board and get it right first time so that it's easy for them to use. Because not everything in your component structure will be in the format or the order that a business user would kind of edit this stuff. So this is pretty important. Also, full version history, full rollbacks, plus some cool stuff like you can get like sample outputs. I know it's lorem ipsum, but this can really help with prototyping and things like that. So just copy it, use it, take your things. You can put some settings in there too. But building on that, how to get that stuff into Amplience, we've shown you the schema editor, but obviously we've got management APIs, so you can put that stuff straight into Amplience. There's APIs for everything. So everything that you can do in the back office, you can do via an API. We also have CLI tooling, so you can automate from services or anything else, or your local development or anything there. But we also allow your content models to be stored externally to Amplience if you want to. And what I mean by that is, as long as they're on a HTTPS location, we can pull them in from there. So common scenarios are things like pointing to master branches and different things in your GitHubs, right? So that means that as part of your development process, the content models and the components and everything else are there, which can be really, really helpful. But they're all options, so freedom to do it that in any way. If we take it back to Vue a little bit, right? We've got this component that's part of Vue Storefront, the simple banner that's in the carousel, right? And you see in there, we've done the same thing. We've chosen what we're going to manage, title, subtitle, description, image, and things like that. We just mapped it into there. No validation in this case, just super, super simple. That content comes back as JSON. It gives you meta information about where it is, what the IDs are, what schema it's built with, so you can traverse and do some complex logic if you want to. But everything is in that data, and that data just maps to your props, and those props are there to draw the experience, right? So really, really simple. So the role of Amplience is to model the experience and also manage the experience, because it's UI to be able to edit. And we'll go into some of the extensions a bit later, which can make it really, really fun. And then your applications can all retrieve and render that experience from the data that they've got. Freedom, another one, right? So we also separate the content models from what the business users need to see, because you might name them close to your component so you can tie them together, but it might make no sense to anyone else. So we also have content types, and those content types give you all the stuff that the business user needs to see, right? So these are things like icons, names, cards, so they can see in the UI, a snapshot of what's going on, a bit like Twitter. But you also have usage and access. You can assign things to different repositories. Really handy for development. So you can have your own development repositories, and at a click of a button, when you're happy, it can be ready for use without any other forms of deployment that you need to do. We also have visualizations. We'll come to that later, but it's really, really important. Right. Next freedom to customize, right? With everything needs a framework, and everything needs to be able to do what you need it to be able to do, right? So extensions Amplience are mini applications, which literally just take over the editing experience and other areas of the platform. So pulling in third-party apps, different UIs, however you want. But all they will do is call our APIs to get information, or external APIs, and save it back if they need to, right? It's about changing the experience. So some examples here, like maps, products, analytics, informations, all inside of that content experience. And we'll give you a few examples, right? The most popular are interfacing with products, and this is one with commerce tools. Where that works is that you search, you get your products, you curate them together, it stores the relevant IDs in the content form. The user experience looks like this. This is a live customer, Harry Rosen in Canada. But what they do is curate, and you can see on the right-hand side the JSON structure that's outputted to the applications itself. Super, super simple, but we give you loads of other things too, like you can set your permissions for your apps so you can keep everything super, super secure. We give you installation parameters, which are passed through securely in the SDK only to your app. So that means that you can store things like API keys, credentials, and everything else. So complete obfuscation from anything that's in client side or anything there. Some examples, translation examples, behavioral personalization examples, which give you like content relevance and also being able to choose target groups and things like that to associate content to. Media transformation parts, obviously that's part of our one as well, which is superb. So you can do like flipping, cropping, play with the colors, hue, saturation, and everything else. Rich text authoring for people that are more used to like WordPress style things for blogs. But we've done it in a JSON way in Markdown. So that means that you can not only just have the data still headless, like properly, but also have the ability to add different components into that. So it's kind of a different editing experience to a form-based thing. Color management, Google Maps integrations, content trees, multi-schema choosers. But these are all content editing experiences. The extensions also range to different areas. So a couple of examples here. There's Google Analytics dashboard, which reads in your information, and also because you can link to content, because each bit of content in Amplience has its own ID, you can click straight through to the bits that you need to edit, right? And another example using the workflow statuses in Amplience around like where things are, put things into a like Kanban board, so you can like go through reviews or everything else, right? So lots of examples there to be able to customize. Perhaps one of the most important ones though is this one. The freedom to preview at any stage. So this is important for everyone in the process, like the management, the content producers, the developers, and everything else, right? So the way that we do this, you probably saw from the first screenshot, you got your content model, that's on the left-hand side, kind of stuck to what we said before. But then we have your visualizations, which are on the right-hand side. You can have multiples of these, right? You can have different breakpoints, you can have different applications, and we'll show you this stuff. But what that means is that you can see what you're doing at all times, and that's really, really, really important. And the way that we do that is quite unique. So we send through a staging API. So this is a domain to load content from, and that will give you access to any unpublished content, and that's unique, right? So as long as you pick that up, and when your application is getting its content and uses that domain, it gets all of this stuff. for free, and loads more. So instead of having different boxes, different stacks, different environments, different whatever, for a content production process, this is all virtualized and automated, and you don't have to worry about anything. Like each content has its ID, so you know what is being loaded, and obviously locale things and any other parameters you need. But it might be worth me quickly showing this for you. So this is the Amplience back office here. Lots of stuff that I won't explain today. You can see here we can create content. That content's based on those content types that we've talked about before. This account has quite a few different ones, but more than happy to show you. If we click into one of these, this is a simple banner. Super simple. It's got like an image, it's got some text, it's got like lots of different things throughout. So you'll see the left-hand side over here is the content form effectively, and tells us what we're going to see on the right-hand side. The right-hand side lets us choose to see this on different environments. So we can see it as content by itself. We can see it in context of the whole site, which means that we'll see it like with the header, the footer, and everything else that we'll see. You can get all your different breakpoints and configure all those things in Amplience. You can pop them out so you can see them properly. So for example, over here, if we make this look on a mobile, we notice that we've got a problem over here, right? This image is not cropping in the right direction. We've set the templates up to be able to crop. So what we can do in Amplience is set a focal point, and that focal point on the image will then be used for auto cropping. So let's put it somewhere that makes sense. And then when we save, then we see, okay, this is how our content's going to look, and taking advantage of all the media APIs and everything from Amplience. But it's not just that. Obviously, you can look at things in different viewports, but you can also embed your applications inside of Amplience too, right? So this is actually pulling in a real live application via emulator software, and then you can see how that content will look inside of there as well. So complete confidence about what you're going to do. Can be other things as well, like I said, email templates or anything there. Right, this is a different render. Could be fun things, QR code. For those of you watching now with your phones, feel free to just scan that, and you'll just get a little preview of this on your phones as well. I should have given you more time to do that, but everything here is JSON, right? So you can have as many of these as you want, and you can see exactly how this content is going to be all the way through. Cool. So tell you what we'll do. We'll save this snapshot of this to an edition over here, and this will come into play a little bit later. So I'm just going to save this to end of April, and let's put it to the launch edition. Woohoo! Great. Okay. So let's talk about slots. So slots are ways to manage your experience and choose where things are going to go. So this is View Storefront site. In here, you can have like a slot as a whole page, or you can have a slot as the individual parts. And what that allows you to do is choose where content is going to go. But this ties into the planning, so it makes things really nice. Right. So first thing to understand is about versioning, content versioning. Right. And usually things are like linear versions 1, 2, 3, whatever, all the way up, right? Amplience also has snapshot versioning, which means that your content can be used in other contexts of other content, and each of those can have its own snapshots of how it's saved. And that means that you have linear, plus you have these kind of graphs of things. And because we have those, it means that we can look after staging as a microservice, like we talked about before. So not just visualizing stuff, but also seeing it in the context of time with associated things that have been put against them, which means you can kind of associate something, duplicate, or not even duplicate, just save another version to something else and then see it in the future, which is really cool. And obviously your published content is your live content, and that's there. The way that works is that you can plan, you can preview, and put your components together. And same thing, all your application needs to do is load content from the domain that we tell it to. You can pass in some other stuff as well, but then you'll get everything at that point in time in the future, and it's not published. And when the time hits, it's good to go. Right. So I might actually show you a little bit of that for 2 seconds. So I'm just going into the planning calendar within Amplience. And within this, you can see a range of different editions with different bits of content. And what it allows us to do is just click on these things, preview the content. And what that will do is launch the application at that point in time. That's just loading up now. But as you can see, we've got different content in different slots. It's lovely stuff to do with wines, which is awesome. If we look at what the site is, right now that's live, it's here, and it's got completely different content. And we've got a nice little tool in place, which lets you kind of see how those things are put together. So we can see different slots, right? Homepage slot, a body slot, similar to the diagram that we saw before. But as we were saying before, that means that we can go through different points in time, right? And see different content throughout. So as we go through this calendar and put things together, we can see exactly how that content is going to look. So this one's about high tea now and makes me hungry, which is fantastic. So all of this capability is part of Amplience. It's super easy to implement. But that's not the whole story, because there's other parts of the application as well. So the next is freedom to connect. And this won't take long. This is just about webhooks, right? We have an enterprise webhooks system that is way more than just webhooks. And this is so that other applications can listen to what you're doing in real time and communicate as part of one system. So these can have multiple triggers, security secrets, and lots of other things you can read down there. But the whole point is that automation. So typical things will be like setting up your webhooks, could be into search, could be something else, could have all your retries. You can choose how it's triggered. You can choose how to filter it. You can choose how to customize the payload. You can put custom headers, so you can authenticate directly to other APIs. Loads and loads of really cool stuff. And obviously you got all your auditing and retries as part of this stuff, and being able to resend and see exactly what the other application said to you. So in complete control. But this could be used to trigger static builds and things like that, right? So as part of a campaign going live, you could notify your application and say, right, these are the things that are in this campaign, therefore I'll clear the cache on these pages because these have this bits of content in there. So you can be very selective to keep your application super fast all the way through. All right, and one more for you before we end up. Freedom to structure and categorize. So what I mean by that is content, right? And you can look after anything in the experience. And typically a lot of those require taxonomies and hierarchies to be able to organize and be able to associate things together. And that's something that is in Amplience as well. So a little video over here just showing different things of how you can do things like a tree structure, or it could be any other categorization in place. But this means that you can create navigations, you can associate segments, you can do whatever else that you need to do. And these APIs are being released very shortly. The UI is already in the platform, but it means that you can model all types of experiences and get things at different nodes and traverse a tree to be able to get to different places. Right. If you're interested, there is an integration that's on the Vue Storefront site. Have a look at this. It will show you, the API integrations there, the sample content and components, and you got your preview, your visualization, all the stuff that we've kind of showed before. But I'll leave it there because I'm out of time, but there's loads more. So I'll leave it at thank you, and let's take some questions.